Have you ever started calling yourself something that God had never called you? A failure, too old, broken, behind, just a single mom, not enough, or even stuck. I didn't realize how easy it was to do that until I read Ruth chapter 1 again. Naomi told the people, "Mm-mm, do not call me Naomi, call me Myra. Myra means bitter." But here's what changed everything for me. Naomi changed her name, but God never did. And when I saw that, I stopped just reading Naomi's story. I started to see my own story. Because when I moved from New York City to West Virginia as a single mom, there was moments where I questioned everything. I questioned if I made the right decision. I questioned if I disrupt my children's lives. I questioned if I really actually heard from God. And maybe I was not calling myself Myra, but I was definitely calling myself something that God never intended for me to be calling. So today I want to talk about Ruth chapter 1, Naomi, and what happens when pain tries to rename you before God is finished writing in your story. So when I read Ruth chapter 1, I saw Naomi differently. She left her home with her husband and her two sons. Years later, she came back with nothing. She came back empty. She came back depleted. And when the people saw her, they recognized her. And she told them off the back, do not call me Naomi. Call me Myra, because the Almighty has dealt bitterly with me. That stopped me because Naomi did not just say, I'm going through a bitter season. She said, call me bitter. Her pain began to shape how she saw herself. And I think that we do the same thing too. Maybe you don't actually change your name, but we speak labels over ourselves. Like, I'm broken. I failed. I am too late. I am not enough. I'm always going to struggle. Little by little, we start to describe what we are going through and we start to identify with it. But Naomi called herself Myra. God never did. God never agreed with the name her pain gave her. And somebody needs to hear this today. Just because life hurts you does not mean that your identity changed. Just because you went through loss does not mean loss gets to name you. Just because you have made some mistakes does not mean that failure is your name. God still knows who you are. So when I moved from New York City to West Virginia, I thought we was just relocating my family. But it was deeper than that. I was leaving a place that I was born and raised. The streets I knew, the people I knew, the culture I knew, the life that I have built over time. It was just familiar. And I love New York City. New York is my home. But there comes a point where I believe that God was calling my family into a different season. From the outside, people may see the graduation, they may see the smiles, they may even hear my testimony, but there's a part that some people don't even know. There were tears. There was nights I wondered if I made the biggest mistake of my life. And one of the hardest parts was leaving my son behind temporarily. My heart was split between two states. I did not know how things was going to work out. I just knew I had to trust God. The season changed me as a mom, as a woman, and as a believer. And this is why Ruth chapter 1 speaks to me so deeply. Because sometimes obedience feels like loss before it can feel like a blessing. So Naomi had been living in Moab for years. Moab, Moab became familiar, and familiar can be very tricky because familiar feels safe, even if it's not fruitful. Sometimes we stay in places longer than we should because we know them. We are familiar. Not because they are helping us to grow, not because we are producing peace, but because they are familiar. For me, leaving New York was not about rejecting where I come from. It was about recognizing that God was calling me forward, and that required faith. So I'm asking, what is your Moab? What is the place, the mindset, the relationship, the job, the fear, or the pattern that is feels so familiar to you, but it keeps you from moving forward? Maybe it's comfort. Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's even that job, or maybe it's that him and her relationship. Whatever that thing is, that belief that's keep holding you bounded. Naomi heard that God was doing something different to his people in Judah. She heard that he was blessing people. So she got up and she moved. She did not see the full picture, but she moved towards what she heard God was doing. And sometimes that is what faith looked like. You don't need to know every detail. You do not need to know how everything is going to work out, but you know that God is calling you to move. So, one of the most powerful things that I learned in studying Ruth chapter 1 is that Naomi was heading back towards Judah. Now, Judah means to praise. That blessed me because Naomi was walking towards praise while she still felt empty. She did not see restoration yet. She did not meet Boaz yet. She did not know what God was about to do through Ruth. She was still grieving. She was still moving in the right direction. That became my story too. So when I moved to West Virginia, I did not have everything figured out. I was starting over in my 40s, y'all, in a new place, in a different situation, in a different environment. I was learning how to build again. I was starting from scratch. And some days, praise is all I had. That's all I could do. Not because everything felt good, but because praise reminded me that God was still present in my life. He was walking this step and this process with me. Praise helped me to stay close to Him while I was waiting to understand what He was doing. And maybe that is a word for you too. You may not have the answers yet. You may not see the breakthrough yet. You may not even understand why everything has happened the way that it did, but you can still move forward towards praise. Years later, I watched my son walk across that stage, right? And in that moment, I felt everything: the prayers, the sacrifices, the fear, the uncertainties. The nights I questioned myself, I watched him walk across that stage with a scholarship, college acceptance, and a future ahead of him. He said, I will never forget what he said to me. He said, Mom, you did the right thing. And I remember him telling me, like, Mom, I could have ended up in a gang, locked up, or even dead. And I remember crying. But now I could cry tears of joy because he was right, as well as God leading us in his direction. Because in that moment, God allowed me to see what He was protecting us from. What I was questioning myself, God was covering us. While I was crying, God was working. While I was wondering if I made the right decision, God was writing a story that I could not see. And this is what I see in Naomi's story. Naomi thought she was coming back empty, but God was not finished. She could not see the redemption that was coming her way. She could not see what God was going to do through Ruth. She could not see that her story was still unfolding. Maybe you are judging your story too early. Maybe you're naming yourself based on a chapter that God has not finished writing. Maybe you feel empty, but God is preparing restoration. Maybe you feel forgotten, but God is still working behind the scenes. Maybe today you are living your own Ruth chapter 1. Maybe you feel heavy. Maybe you made a decision by faith, but you're still waiting to understand it. Maybe you are obeying God, but it still hurts. Maybe you are in between what you left and what God is still building. But can I encourage you today? God is still calling you by your name, the name that He gave you. He has not changed His mind about you. He has not forgotten you. And He is not finished writing your story. This week, I want you to ask yourself just one question. What have I been calling myself that God never called me? Write it down. I need you to pray about that. Open the Bible and ask God, what do you say that I am? Who do you say that I am? Because your pain has given you a name. Your past has given you a name. People may have even given you a name, but God gets the final say. So remember this. Do not rename yourself because of a season God has not finished writing. If this message encouraged you, let me know in the comments. Tell me one area of your life where you are trusting God, even though you cannot see the outcome yet. And if you're in a season where you are trying to discover that gifts that God has already placed inside of you, take my free Faithful Foundation Finder. It's in the link in the description below. Please like and subscribe this video so that this video can reach other moms like you and me. So God bless you, and I'll see you in the next video.